from its very high amount of torque, okay? 387 pound-feet of torque is a lot of torque in any car. But what I think a lot of people don't really realize is having all of that torque from the second you step on the accelerator, because of the instant torque of the electric motor, makes a huge difference. So just the passing power and that initial surge of acceleration just punches you in the back. It was very impressive. Unfortunately, I didn't get to experience the all-out acceleration of the P90 or P100D. That would have been awesome. But those are genuinely extremely fast cars. So other than the speed, why would you actually get a Tesla? Teslas are big sedans. They're luxury cars. And I have to say it was very comfortable. The range was quite practical, if it lives up to it. I didn't really get to test that. The rear visibility was terrible, okay? Otherwise, visibility was pretty good. But the rear visibility is fixed by the fact that it has a rear-facing camera, which not only aids in parking, but you just leave it on the whole time, and it's kind of like your rear window and rear view mirror. And it shows up on this very large screen that's basically like a giant iPad or tablet. And speaking of which, that's kind of a cool feature of the Tesla as well. All of the controls, I mean nearly 100%. I think the car had 2 actual buttons, and one of them was for the glove compartment. But all of those controls are on that screen, which is very cool. It keeps the car very clean, it's uncluttered, it feels very modern. However, I'm not totally sold on it, because one of the things about having controls in a car is that you're supposed actually, by the way, before I get into that, I just want to give a quick shout out to _MadeWithJoy. You can check out her Instagram, and she's the one who got that inside the Tesla footage for me. So thank you to her.
In half a mile, turn right onto Baker Street.
Okay. Sorry, I don't really know where I'm going, so you have to deal with these directions. Anyway, speaking of, I didn't really tell you where I'm going. I'm on my way to Lamborghini Newport Beach, and we're going to check out some pretty cool cars there. So, comparisons to the MR2. The MR2 obviously is a very lightweight car. It only weighs a little over 2,600 pounds, and that is literally a ton less than the Tesla, 2,000 pounds. The MR2 is very good at cornering, has good power depending on what your setup is. And of course, it is much, much cheaper. The Tesla that I drove was spec'd to around $80,000, and you can pick up an MR2 for a fraction of that. How about space?
Turn right onto Baker Street.
So as far as practicality and space goes, obviously you have a lot more on the Tesla. The MR2 is not a practical car, really. You know, there are less practical cars out there, but you still don't have a ton of cargo space. And I just got over like 20 lanes. The MR2 is loud. It's reasonably comfortable, but you know, you definitely wouldn't call it a luxury car. Oh, check it out, McLaren. Anyway, where was I? Oh, it's manual, it's engaging. You know, at this point, I use it as my weekend car. And wow, you can see the line of supercars across the street there. You know, it also is an older car. It certainly doesn't have near the level of tech that the Tesla has. And although, you know, I put some Bluetooth and stuff like that in here, however, it's just a completely different level. But that's not really the focus of the car. I think the styling of the MR2 is excellent. On the Tesla, it's okay. So in general, you know, they're two very, very different cars, which I'm sure you didn't really need me to tell you that. Some similarities, I would say, are the fact that they're both pretty fast. In fact, the Tesla that I drove, the way it was spec'd, and the way I have my MR2 set up, I would say the acceleration was very, very similar. And although the MR2 has much less space, they both have a front and rear trunk space. So that's another similarity. And that's about where it stops. You know, you go from having no traction control, no ABS, stick shift, to autopilot. You know, it's a completely different thing. Actually, one other similarity is the range. With my current setup, I get about the same range on a tank as that Tesla did on a charge. So, with that, that's my comparison of the MR2 and the Tesla. And now we're going to go check out